So, but we have to have systems in place. So we talk about how do you get your body conditioned. Hey, we're going to pick, pecs, glutes, shoulders, back, and we do lifts. Well, for our emotional fitness, for our mental fitness, let's pick some key mental muscle groups and train them with drills. Part of our work this morning was, Charlie, here's the concepts you're going to teach. Well, what drills can we do to foster and strengthen those skills?
Yeah, it's so, and again, it's where the good stuff lies. It's like working out a muscle, and like these guardrails of life. If you don't work, if I should speak for myself, I spent a lot of time not even knowing these mental, emotional muscles existed, let alone how to train them to serve me. And I spent a lot of time literally in the gutter of life, because if my values, if my principles, if my mental conditioning, the things that I want to feel, think, and do aren't strong, then in the face of adversity, challenge, and change, trust me when I tell you this, your most active response could be your weakest attribute. Because that's the one I was strengthening. I was strengthening my avoidance muscle. I wanted to be courageous, but I was strengthening my avoidance muscle, and I was using drugs and alcohol to numb the pain of a life I didn't want. And so when adversity, challenge, and change came, my strongest response was my weakest attribute. I went to avoidance because it's the only muscle I had worked out. Today, my strongest attribute is courage, honesty, integrity. And let me tell you, in the face of adversity, challenge, and change, this person sitting in front of you and this person sitting across from me have a strategy, have a system to deal with adversity, challenge, and change that does not require drugs, alcohol, or avoidance. It requires honesty, integrity, servant leadership. Yeah. Those are strong.
Oh, 100%.
And those keep me out of the gutters.
Well, and then let's just bring this home, baby. Let's bring this home. Service, man.
Service.
It's not about you. So brain science tells us when you serve and help people, your brain produces dopamine and serotonin. But maybe the mother of all happy chemicals is oxytocin. Harvard did research dating back to the 1930s. It's still going on, the longest research study on happiness, and they found the number one source of happiness is not car, income, baller house. It's relationships. And the best way to improve relationships is to have this servant mindset. To, how can I help? I teach our kids, seek to serve, don't swerve.
Hendersons are helpers.
And we have a family motto, that's Hendersons help.
That's it.
I'm like, yo, kids, what do Hendersons do? Help, And I asked them one question at the end of the day, who'd you help today? So, but part of that is being around a community, being around a tribe. Your vibe attracts your tribe. You're a byproduct of the 5 people that you hang out with the most. So why don't you be the person that you want to be around, being kind, empathetic, listening. We don't have to have the answers or the other solutions. Just be there, be available, just that presence. But it's so fun to see what happens to you in life when you start hanging out with the right people and you start noticing their habits, their traits. And peer pressure goes both ways.
That's right.
Peer pressure goes both ways. It can go negative or positive. So, and I would say maybe the most life-changing thing you can do, listeners, right now, if you have some goals, aspirations to get better, and this maybe sound kind of hardcore, but there are 3 types of people that are in our life: a negative or a minus, a 0, and a plus. So a minus, they are taking energy. They're lazy, they're negative, they're a victim, they're bad-mouthing everything, they're maybe noticing, they only talk about when you, or maybe you're having success and they talk crap about it because they want to pull you down. Or there's like a 0, which is really not above or below. They're not giving or taking, which those are fine. But these pluses are one that are elevating you. Are you an energy taker or an energy maker? Attitudes are contagious. Are you a fountain or a drain? Are you a vitamin or a virus? So let's get around some people that are going to elevate us. A rising tide lifts all ships. And let's just make kindness normal. Let's make optimism normal. Let's make resilience normal. Let's make empathy normal. Let's make big, crazy freaking goals normal. Let's make serving people normal. Let's make creativity normal. Well, it's hard to do those things if you're around a bunch of negative people.
It is.
So let's get yourself around, get a mentor, get a coach, be a part of a small group, and your life's going to change. This is a law of success.
was just be consistent and practicing my meditation, like every day. Like that's something that I do. Like I never stop doing. Like the more you do it, the more you realize like this is the way. This is it. Like just continue to keep doing this, and you will come into alignment with everything that you've ever imagined. And so I do that. I make sure I'm constantly drinking water. And the reason why that's so important, because water is a healing element,
That's right.
and all the way down to your cellular level, to the molecular level, right? And we have a, a, a strong impact on on the way that our water is consumed. Whether if we have negative vibes, we're going to have some negative water. But if we have positive vibes, that's going to impact the water that we drink. And so that's the reason why I drink water. And just remembering to be flexible. My meditation creates my anchor for the day and for life. But when you think of an anchor, you think of a ship. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And so when you think about when a ship drops its anchor underwater, the anchor doesn't stake the ship in the ground. Um, the anchor, connects with the ground, but it doesn't stop the ship from floating, right?
Yeah, that's
And
so
yeah,
true.
and so throughout our day, we are constantly hit with waves of negativity and waves of just adversity. And so, the ship has to continue to float, even though that it's anchored, but it doesn't move. It's not moved, right? But it's constantly floating. And so you have to be able to float and flow throughout your day. And so just being flexible with yourself, not being so hard on yourself, loving yourself. Because if you don't love you first, how do you expect to give love to other people? Like the reason why there's so many divorce rates is because you get into a divorce not knowing who you are, first and foremost. Because the minute when there's a reflection of you and you're like, whoa, I don't like that person, you become a victim, and then you blame the other person, like, I'm getting out of here, I'm leaving, because you don't know yourself, you don't know who you are. But really what they're saying is, that's me, I don't know who I am. But I'm gonna put the blame on you, and I'm gonna walk away from this. I'm gonna feel so much better about myself because it's you. You're toxic, right? And the reason why is because we haven't had a chance to spend time with ourselves. So um, once you spend time with yourself, then it's easy for you to spend time with other people. If you have money and someone asks you for money, and you have the money to give to them, you will give to them in the most generous way possible. But if someone asks you for money and you don't have any money, you're gonna feel bad for not being able to give them money. So now you created your own problems because you're feeling bad about not being able to give someone else some money. So the only way that you'll be able to give some money is if you have some money yourself. So that way you don't lose your happiness, but you feel grateful for being able to give something, because you could be on the other end of the stick. So if people keep that same mindset and understand you got to give yourself love first before you can love someone else, then this world will be a better place. And these are a lot of the things that I do consistently. So that's why I smile so big. I smile from the heart, because it's my spirit that people connect with, and I realize that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And so when I learn how to tap into my inner spirit, which is our in spirit, it's the root word. Those two words are the root words for inspiration. So I use my in spirit to inspire other spiritual people. So when I speak to people, I make sure that you know, when I speak to people, a lot of things that I say go over their head, but it wasn't intended for their mind. It was intended for their heart, which is where
Ah,
the heart is the house of the soul. The heart is the house of the spirit, right? So I'm constantly speaking to your spirit, and that's because I want you to feel what I'm saying, not, hear it and then try to process it and then be like, oh, okay, well, that's his opinion. No, because I'm not giving my opinion. If that's the case, then I need to stop talking, because what they say, opinions are like assholes. So who gives this?
Yeah, yeah, we all got one, and no one gives a shit. Yeah,
Right, exactly. So, I make sure that I understand that words are very powerful, and the words that we use can either hinder someone or help them enrich their lives. And so, just make sure that positivity, it drives me, and I'm inspired by me. To be completely honest, someone asked me the other day, like, "Who are you inspired by?" I was like, "Me." I said,
that's right.
and the
And that's
reason,
right.
yes, and the reason why is because I spent enough time to see how incredible I am, right? And I was just like, wow, this is me. This is who I am. But you have to kind of create that space so you can see yourself. Because when you are this close to something, how can you see anything else? All you can see is what's in your view outside of you, but once you create space where you can see yourself from like a third person view, it's like, hey, wow, that's a cool individual, or like, wow, this is what God made us to be. And it's like, wow, like I'm doing these things. I'm looking to enrich people's lives. I'm looking to enrich athletes' lives so they don't have to go through the same thing that I went through. I'm making sure that I make an impact on people when I meet them, but remind people that there's something inside of you that you have not tapped into. But the minute you tap into it, you'll realize, wow, there's a light inside of me. Wow, I have energy. Wow, I'm tapping into my inner G, my INNER capital G, my inner good, my inner genius, my inner God, my inner goddess, my inner greatness, and my inner GPS, the thing that will not allow, it'll navigate you throughout life, whenever you get lost. And so, man, it's been a blessing to be able to be a part of a monastery, go live at a monastery and learn this. And I would go to the monastery and go in the library and just pull out books from like the 1600s and read them and see what they were talking about, meditation and contemplation. And I would just sit there and cry because I'm like, I'm reading this. Like, I'm reading this. Like, wow, I'm storing this information. I'm channeling this energy, this information from the 1600s into my present life. Like, wow, like this is a gift. This is amazing. And so much gratitude was in that, which allowed for me to embody it and just be like, you know what? This is me. This is who I am. This is the life that I'm living at this moment in time. So live into the wholesome part of it, into the fullness of it, and make an impact. I'm not looking to make an impact um uh in an egotistical way. I'm looking to make an impact in a way to to help, to make sure that we realize like our true power, right? And it comes from our peace. Again, meditation doesn't, just because I practice meditation and I spent time at a monastery and people call me half human, half monk, doesn't mean that I'm holier than thou. It just makes me whole.
That's right.
And with me being whole, I find peace. And when I find peace, like it's like I have true power. And now it's like, all right, now that I have this power, like you guys, you got it too. Let me show you the way. And that's my walk. And that's what's in my heart. And that's what I live every single day. And I just remind people like you are incredible. Like, but stop telling yourself that you're not.
One of those concepts, if you will, because some people might call it a concept where they're not in the place to embrace it, is gratitude. No matter what place we are in, there's always room to find a seed of gratitude, because nothing is too insignificant to acknowledge or be grateful for. And that is in the moment, right? Because when we have that we know it just opens our heart, it opens a door, and it's such a great beginning And I have found that both challenging and rewarding, you know what I mean, in the moment of so much suffering. And, the other piece that you were talking, that it brought up for me was the breath, like just being in our breath, the gratitude that life is breathing us, we're still here. We can find that to be grateful for, and that's also something in the moment, right here, right now. If there's nowhere else to turn, it's just focusing on the breath, even for a second. There's no, we don't have to like create obstacles of, I can't meditate for an hour or 30 minutes. We could take a moment and just breathe in and out and focus on the breath for a simple few moments. And that can be a beginning.
How important, I'm going to dig into gratitude a little bit. How important, and where did you find, as you sit there 5 years, essentially, in a bed, dealing with all of the things you've had to recover from, where did you finally grasp the concept of gratitude? Because I think sometimes people feel like there's nothing to be grateful for and in their lives. And, I don't know about you, but I just took a breath and there's a lot of oxygen in the world and I need it to live. And even just being grateful for that seems to be a good starting point. But where did you find the concept of gratitude and how did it start to grow legs for you? Because I think it's foundational to a life worth living. And I've been doing gratitude lists for a long time. In fact, I started writing them down recently every morning in a journal that my daughter gave me. And when I find myself, my little hack for people that don't understand the benefits of gratitude, if you do a gratitude list and write 3 things you're grateful for and you're still feeling in self-pity or self-doubt, imagine not having those things and then relook at being grateful for them. I'm going to tell you right now that when you write down you're grateful for oxygen, then you imagine not having it, you'll find you're even more grateful for it. So back to you and where you found this lifeline of gratitude, because I love that you emphasize that as being foundational in your recovery.
Yeah. And thank you for everything you just shared. And I love that. And I love that your daughter brought you the journal to be able to do that. It wasn't always easy. I'm just really speaking the truth. There were more days than not that I was filled with anger.
Yeah.
Because I was in such a victim place of like, why is this happening to me? And, what is the purpose of all this? And even within that, I think, again, I go back to, a spiritual practice, whatever that is for somebody, just to be able to have something that I could hold and it could be like a rope for me to just keep going from moment to moment. And, also just waking up every day, even though it was really hard, there's room to just say, I open my eyes today. I can see today. I can walk today. I have my body parts. I mean, it was really like the basic things because there were times when I was so full of inflammation, I couldn't walk, and so you start with whatever is available to you, even just opening your eyes in the morning, and there's actually, my mentor, she teaches, there's 5 different types of gratitude. And I'm just going to share a couple of them that might be helpful when
Please.
we can't reach for that, obvious gratitude in the moment. And, one of them is like thinking back to a memory, a happy memory, and just being grateful for that, having the ability to recall or call up that feeling inside ourselves, is all part of heart-brain coherence, when we're in this coherent space and we're breathing into the heart space and we're calling up something, that can immediately shift everything in the body, from the brain to the cortisol to the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's a memory can recall that. Another one is, again, what I just said, anything around you, the smallest thing that you can find available to you to just be grateful and see how long you might be able to hold that energy of gratitude, and again, even if it's seconds, it's a second more than where you were a second ago, and the other thing is, what I was talking about, the future and the why is like a generative gratitude, something in the future, thanking the universe for bringing me the healing that is on its way, or, bringing this emotional shift that's on its way, and all these are ways that we can start to rewire the brain so that the process isn't quite as arduous, to move into this space of hope and possibility.
Wow. And that is, and those words ring so true to me because, I'm struck by a few things. First of all, can you imagine, Jude? I mean, when you sit back and you take a second to think of where you've come from, and then you see yourself on your couch with your beautiful artwork behind you, sharing this story with such hope and optimism and clarity. Could you have ever imagined? I mean, I think if you would have thought where you'd be now, you would have I bet you undersold yourself back then, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, and it's really interesting you say that because, it is so hard to imagine, which is why mindfulness and living in the moment, is such a profound and yet, it could be very challenging, of really just staying in the moment, especially when our bodies are screaming and our brains are screaming. And Dr. Joe Dispenza, calls it like neighing and bucking, like we want to be present and silent, but everything in us is just, creating all kinds of havoc because being in that stillness is so painful.
Well, and I'll share, some, just a little bit of research so people can understand why that bucking happens and why what you just described is so important, the rewiring and the focusing on it, because, what I've learned from my own diving into mental conditioning and into mindfulness is that our brain really does attach to negative experience. I mean, it's that prehistoric brain in ourselves that looks for worry, fear, danger, and keeps us on high alert. And so negative experiences, as you and I both have had, they get stored in long-term memory and get recalled very quickly. But the science and brain mapping has showed that it takes 12 to 15 seconds of intentional reflection on any good experience for it to convert in the same way as negative experiences do into our long-term memory for us to be able to recall. So I don't want to minimize what you just described about these experiences of the past that were good. It's important. And I've done this in workshops that I do where I'll have people grab a memory and really, their daughter at a dance recital or their son at a baseball game or their significant other at a concert they've been wanting to go to, and to capture that moment. And then I'll put a timer on and have them spend 12 to 15 seconds keeping that image locked in. And I think people are amazed at how long that is to actually focus on something good, but that's how long it takes to build that muscle of focusing on what's good. And so I'm so glad that you just emphasized those parts of gratitude, because otherwise, our brains just default back to that negative loop. And I've heard people say this is evolutionary now. I mean, with people like Dr. Joe Dispenza, and all of the kind of old sage guys like Zig Ziglar and all these guys becoming, even George Mumford, who's been practicing mindfulness since the 80s, is becoming kind of in vogue. Finally, people are latching on. They want to know how to become, healthy. And so this is really important. So thank you so much for talking about the importance of grabbing some of those positive memories and holding on to them and really remembering them.
The brain doesn't do well with uncertainty. And we're in a pandemic and you don't know, you don't get to know when it's going to end.
Right on.
Right. And so everybody's in trauma because the brain doesn't do well at this. Okay. So it has to come up with some different mechanisms. Right. And so you see a lot of people acting it out. You see people drinking more. You see people spending more. You see people divorcing more. You see people affairing more. They're not knowing what to do. And the answer to life's difficulties is to get responsible. There's no other way around it. You're either a victim to it or you're still in a way a victim to nature, but you're responsible and you're contending with it. So it's hard to get a routine. It's hard to do it. We're used to what we're used to. But I would assure anybody that if they did it for 2 weeks, 14 days it takes to, and you end up knowing, oh my God, I've just become different, right? So a basic routine is that you have a line in the sand of when you wake up. So a lot of people are, I wake up around 12 or 1 because I can do work from home. Nope, not a good idea. Generally, you want to wake up. If you really have a great lifestyle, you can time it, but usually waking up in the morning is a good idea. So you want to wake up at a specific time, relatively early, right?
Yes, sir.
And all of the hard things of the day should happen in the first 6 hours. Okay? It's not that we want to look at it like, well, I have time. It's like, I want to contend with time. I'm trying to create order, right? I'm trying to create responsibility. I'm trying to create meaning. Well, the only way to do that isn't by hitting a home run. It's one little step. So it's wake up at a certain time, definitely some form of exercise and or meditation, right? If you don't have a job, learn something, right? Really, organize your house. Make it perfect or near perfect. Put your responsibility into your life in any way that you can. Then you can flip a switch. And then the only other thing is it's very important to take a walk a day, right? It's weird things happen when our brain only sees a certain thing. I mean, ask anybody in jail. It doesn't go well. So get out just once a day, right? And then make sure, even if you don't want to, you're responsible to talking to somebody else.
Yeah, that's a formula. That's a recipe, and I hope you'll if you're listening and struggling, those are simple things that you can do. It really can be grounding. Those are all things that I've learned to do. I've learned that the pain of discipline is much heavier than the pain of regret. So I'm sorry. We're going to cut that because I'm going to say that the pain of discipline weighs a lot less than the pain of regret. And it's that regret cycle that I was into, which is the avoidance, that causes a lot of shame and guilt. But the pain of that simple discipline of building that routine builds self-esteem, does it not?
It does.
Yeah. And that's ultimately we want to feel good about what we do by looking at what it is that we do and then reflecting back on it to build on it. Because I think if you build discipline in any portion of your life, you can actually build discipline into all portions of your life. And so, Paul, where can people find out more about you? How do people get in touch with you? Do you have, can you share your website and how people get in touch with you if they're interested? And I will tell you that Paul and I have started an executive and professionals transformation class for men. We're taking the architecture that I've developed and the therapeutic approach of Paul and trying to help men. So you can learn more about that at my website, which is archwayhouse.com. You can go to the executive transformation page. But Paul, how can people get in touch with you?
Thanks so much for asking. So I have a website called drpaulhirsch.com, drpaulhersh.com. But I should let people know that it's I'm pretty full. It's about a month out, so this is really. So just know that there could be a delay in me getting back to you, but certainly please reach out. And then in the coming year, hopefully I'll be doing some more things where people have access.
That's great. Well, thank you for being in my life and for taking, time out of your packed schedule to share some of these really, really important gems of wisdom, with people that are looking to improve their lives. We've got a lot of hope, in our platform and in our lives, and it's great to share it so that people can start to see some ways to dig themselves out of whatever they're in, man.
Can I end us with a Charlie story?
You most certainly can, my man.
So I really believe that we get these moments in life where you choose the right, you choose the wrong. And the idea is most of us, even me, oftentimes don't know what the right is, but like you spoke to, just don't do the wrong. And when we do the right things tend to happen more. And it's the only way that I've found to actually have self-esteem that's sustaining. Okay. And I just think it's important that that I watched you, 1,000 times, contend with these little tiny decisions. I mean, really contend. And it's a struggle. And then I saw you work it out and make a decision. And then that decision led to another decision. And then you had momentum. And then you walked into my office and you go, shit. I go, what? You said, I just told a lie. Really? What'd you do? I was at my fitness place and big burly guy, I was drinking a tomato juice. Big burly guy says, hey, low sodium, right? And I said, sure, or yes, or something. And Paul, it's not low sodium.
That's right.
I remember I just looked at you And you just look, you go, yeah, I know what I got to go do.
That's right. It's not low sodium, and when we take those shortcuts in any part of our life, we start to tell ourselves it's okay to take shortcuts. And you know what? If you want the life that you want to have, there ain't no shortcuts.
Well, it's a good thing to leave off on, and I would just say this, because I really believe that when we do that, and you don't do it wrong, and then you start to do it right, people are actually becoming something different. We become a different person. We add on to ourselves, you know?
Yeah,
so people need to know you're not alone. We all have shame. We all have error. And if you want to do a little exercise, write down what you least want to look about, what you want to look at in yourself, and just keep it somewhere that you look at sometimes.
Because I don't want to white knuckle it where it's like, don't drink, don't drink. And by the way, the mind doesn't hear the word don't. So all it's going to hear is drink,
Right.
drink, you know? So basically, I mean, the reason why I called it Change Your Algorithm was because I wanted people to understand the premise of all of this in a very simplistic way. And I go, well, think about tech or technology. You know, when there's an algorithm for something like in social media, we kind of abide by it and we go, oh, that's the algorithm, right? But we're a lot like tech stuff and computers because we sleep to recharge, we look for connection, we can store a ton of data, but when computers have malfunctions, and our human malfunctions are anxiety, addiction, depression, when computers have a quote-unquote malfunction, you know, they can reprogram themselves. And then I say, well, you're the same. We forget that we can actually reprogram ourselves the same way that I reprogrammed my belief that I wasn't good enough or that I wasn't worthy. And then people go, oh, I get it. So that's why it's called Change Your Algorithm. And I go, yes, because if you change, you know, your software, your belief system, then you can change the algorithm of your life. Because I remember thinking my algorithm was always going to be, I'm addicted, I'm sad, I'm depressed, nothing's good enough, I'm not good enough, right? And then once I tapped into that software, which was my inner child, reprogramming those beliefs, like everything else changed. Like in the past year and a half, the opportunities that have risen has been so overwhelmingly awesome for me. And it's, again, just by speaking your own truth, you know, and we all have a story to tell. And I want people to know that if you are, you know, going through a dark time, like this doesn't have to be a dark time for the rest of your life. Just because you have a bad day doesn't mean you have a bad life. Like there is a way out, and it's so powerful to know that, Charlie, you've done this, you know, I've done this, where our services are out there, you know. I have therapists at Change Your Algorithm that are willing to help. And truthfully, it's like enough with the shame of anxiety and depression and the shame of, oh, this person's addicted. It's like, we're all human. It's so easy to post your highlight reel on social media and be like, oh, everything's perfect. And right now that I am how I am more interested in talking to people about their scars versus people trying to prove to me that they don't have any. And there's a lot of people out there in the world that are trying to prove that they don't have any scars. I used to be one of them. But once I started to talk about my scars and help people heal from them, I was healing myself too.
That's right.
You know, so there's reciprocity in this.
Yeah, it fills us up, and really, you know, people should know what they don't deal with is going to deal with them. I mean, if you're running from your authentic self, if you're out of alignment, you know, if you have these beliefs about yourself and your behaviors are not consistent with those, ultimately, you know, the check always gets paid, man. And you know, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And you know, one of the things I was excited to do is walk me through the week at Change Your Algorithms, because, you know, we go from mindfulness to boundaries. I mean, walk us through the kinds of things that people have access to, because it is a full capsule of mental wellness. It's a full capsule of you know, whatever kind of issue, because it really is a software issue. I mean, you know, but if we talked about neuroplasticity, we talked about neural pathways, people might say, you know, what are these scientists talking about? And
Right.
so that's why I love Change Your Algorithm, because but we do have the ability to reprogram what doesn't serve us anymore. And
That's
instead
right.
of fighting for our limitations, we can really get excited about our dreams. But we've got this negative bias, whether you're in recovery or not, that tells us that something bad's going to happen, and it really takes a concerted effort of mental conditioning, and that's what I love about your program. So walk us through a week. Tell us how Mondays go and where we end up on Fridays.
Absolutely. So basically, when I started Change Your Algorithm, Mondays was all about reprogramming the mind. And again, I tell people, it's like, look, your laptop isn't exactly using Windows 97 right now, is it? If it were,
No.
It'd be really hard for it to function. And so when we're going through these tough times, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's your body saying, like, it's time to upgrade your software, right? And it's just saying, like, and it's possible. And then you upgrade your software, and then everything's functioning. It's not going to function perfectly, because progress over perfection any day. But Monday's all about reprogramming the mind and tapping into your subconscious, which is 90% of your mind, and how that can change the 10%, which is your conscious mind. And people find it so fascinating, the same way that I found it fascinating when I was learning about it in treatment. And then Tuesday, when we started, was about gratitude, being able to be grateful for things, counting your blessings versus your problems, understanding what thinking errors are, because I used to be somebody that used to filter out the positive. I know millions of people that can filter out the positive, where it's like you can get 99 answers right on the test, but that one answer that you got wrong, you're like, oh, why is this?
Yeah.
Why did I'm so stupid, you know? So gratitude I find to be so healing. Wednesday's all about fulfillment, and basically fulfillment is what you can actually achieve in all aspects of your life. I used to be somebody that just focused on career, money, house, but then there's like the part of you, there's a spiritual part of you, you know, there's that relationship with yourself, the inner child relationship. And that to me is like 360-degree fulfillment. Thursdays, when we started, was a tough one, because it was finding forgiveness and letting go of that resentment, that anger, whether it's towards other people or yourself, which is the toughest.
Right.
And finding forgiveness for yourself. And Fridays, setting boundaries. So being able to, I always say, understand what your values are. Otherwise, you don't know what your boundaries are, because values to me is like building a house, right? That's your house of values. And without your house of values, you're kind of putting up a fence wherever. You're like,
Yeah.
I think my boundaries are here.
Right.
But once you know what your values are, then you know what you're protecting. And now for me, it's like my values are integrity, honesty, sobriety, love, kindness, compassion. And so anything that crosses those lines, I'm like, no. Boundaries.
And do you also use those to make decisions? I mean, I hear you talking about the projects you're working on, because, you know, God gave you a certain amount of gifts. I mean, you didn't go from med school to taking a video of your mom and you in the kitchen and realize that you had a gift for producing. You have a gift for being of service to TV studios and actors that want to produce something, and you're now applying those same values to the kind of projects you want to work on. So everything seems to be in alignment. And I think when we're in alignment, man, it feels good, huh?
And it feels great, because it doesn't feel like I wasted my skills as an executive producer, because now I'm applying it to mental health. Because what I'm really trying to do is break the mental health stigma. And truthfully, if you're going to break a stigma about something, you need to normalize it and put it in mainstream. So any visuals you see of Change Your Algorithm isn't, you know, your stereotypical, are you depressed? And here's a cloud with thunder, you know, shot of the guy by the dumpster. And it's more like, hey, we're changing your algorithm. Everyone goes through anxiety, and we got like neon colors and whatnot, because I want the people who were like me to go, oh, that person's like me, and like this doesn't look uncool. Like I actually would sign up for this, you know. And people get pleasantly surprised when they meet people in the community that are just like you and me, because there was a point where I felt like an addict was somebody that was in a subway with, you know, a paper bag.
Sure.
And that's why for years I was like, oh, I'm not addicted to alcohol, because I'm not the guy passed out in the subway. You know?
Yeah, that's right. And I went through the same thing. And like you, I mean, there were a lot of people when I had to find sobriety that said, I didn't know you had a problem. It's like, well, that's because you don't know how I'm actually living. You know, they didn't see your hotel. They didn't see my hotel room with the bottles everywhere and the, you know, the chopped up Vicodin on my counter. They didn't see how I was living, because, you know, I was walking around trying to show everybody what I thought they wanted to see. And I was so unfamiliar with my authentic self, that I never really showed anybody who I really was. It was
Yeah.
always some version of me that I thought would make them happy. And, people pleasing, I think, is a big part of that false ego, that I've got to be something to everybody in order to fit in, instead of just being who I am and letting the universe bring who's supposed to be around me.
That's exactly right. And trusting that darkness, it's for a purpose, and you don't have to stay in there. Like, I was convinced I was going to stay in that darkness for the rest of my life. And the more I thought about it, the more that I was doing something wrong, the more that I thought about that, the more I was thinking I was a bad person. I went to Sequoia last week, and I was telling the community this at Change Your Algorithm. I said, Sequoia trees, which are these giant trees, they don't just need fire to survive. They thrive off of it, because fire actually is so hot for sequoia trees that it's the only thing that can open up the seeds, and then eventually that's how sequoia trees grow. Decades ago, whenever there was a fire, the rangers would put the fire out, and then all of a sudden sequoia trees stopped growing, and they're like, oh, this is actually good for it. And so I tell people, depression, anxiety, addiction, yes, you feel like life is burning you right now, but it's up to you to ask yourself, how long is that fire going to go on for? Because once that fire ends, that's when you're going to grow.
And so for people to be able to see that we are humans, we're flawed. And that if we are here with each other and we tell each other, I don't know how to do this, I am stuck in this. How did you do it? Well, how did you really do it? Not this, I used to throw up in bags and hide them in my closet because I didn't want my mom to hear me throwing up in the toilet. You know what I mean? That's the shit we need to talk about. Oh, I did, I felt that way too. I had to hide, whether they did it or not. It's the truth. And then how do we get better? How do you get up in the morning? How do you literally get out of bed in the morning if you're in a bed? How do you get up? And it's finding a purpose. If you have a purpose, whatever that may look like, how can you not get up then? But if you don't have a purpose, of course you're going to want to stay in bed.
Yeah, I love that concept, because you don't lack motivation. You're just more motivated to be comfortable and not do anything than you are motivated to get up and see where life can take you. And that's what we do. We pack the most that we can into this stream of life now, because we have a purpose, and you have a huge purpose. And listening to your story and hearing the things that you do today should be, for me, front and center for anybody who feels stuck right now, because this is a lesson in small, simple steps done consistently can literally change the entire trajectory of your life. And the windshield is much bigger than the rearview mirror, because where you are going is way more important than where you've been. And the past is not predictive of the future, is it?
No.
Only if I gotta say it is, if you keep doing the same shit. If you keep doing the same shit, you'll get the same shit. But if you change the behaviors and if you change the activities, you'll get different results.
Well, if you don't speed, you won't get a ticket.
Simple, isn't it? Unbelievable. And you have a huge fan in me. I have you talk about the honesty, the open-mindedness, and the willingness. George Mumford, who's a good friend of mine, and his book is On Its Way to You. He worked with Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. He's a performance expert. He wrote a book called The Mindful Athlete, which I think you're really going to enjoy. And he obviously worked with Phil Jackson on 8 NBA championships. And he talks about the triangle offense that Phil runs, and then he talks about the triangle offense that we run. And ours is honesty, willingness, and open-mindedness. And my friend, that's our triangle offense.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So
good.
So I just have two things as we wrap up. One, if there's any message, or if there's any note you would have written to young Erica, and there was one thing that you could have told that little girl before she went to that coffee shop, but left that coffee shop that night, besides don't go to the party, what's the one thing that you would have told little Erica that you'd want her to know based on all of the steps that you've taken in your life?
No, going back to like with all of the therapy that I do and knowing where my insecurities started, which started at school.
Yeah.
And this need to be validated by people, and that I wasn't the person that everybody said that I was. I think that I would tell that little girl that you are not that person, and that I believe in you, and that I love you. That's what I would tell her. I do tell her that. I have a sign actually on the tennis court. The honest girl, Erica, today talks to the little girl, and I do this sign to remind myself when I'm on the tennis court that I believe in you.
Yeah.
And that
because it's our responsibility to heal those little kids. You know, it's our responsibility to spend time with them, and that is such a powerful message. And wow, I guess my last question is, you know, if there's one thing that you could share with people that are struggling today, you know, that feel hopeless, that can learn from you, what's the ray of sunshine that you want to bring into their lives today before we wrap up?
It's a tough one. I think that what I would tell somebody who's struggling, that we have those moments of clarity. Like, I mean, if I could describe the very, very small ounce of hope in that moment where suddenly, like, things suddenly make sense and you actually want to stop, I would say hold on to that one moment before it goes away again. And beg for help to somebody who, anybody. I don't give a shit if it's the gas attendants, because God or whoever will put that person, because if you mean it in that little moment, God will put whoever in front of you, and just run and say, I need help.